See, stream is coming through. I think we're good to go. That's awesome. Okay. Well, let me get myself more centered here. What's going on? Saturday night. What else is there to do but program, right? We're going to be doing some WPF, which I haven't touched in years. So I'm going to be a little bit rusty. It's going to be interesting. No, but I want to focus on a couple things. I want to dive into some WPF. I want to look at dependency injection stuff. So I'm interested in kind of putting together a couple things. One is I want to just kind of get familiar with WPF again. And the other thing that I'm going to be doing here is looking at iService collection in C Sharp. If you are familiar with a lot of my other content, I use a ton of autofac for dependency injection. So I'm going to be trying to avoid that and trying to see if I can build out some custom things to use iService collection for that. So we are going to jump into some code in just a second, but that's going to be the theme of what's going on here. So we're going to put a little WPF application together. Probably won't get too far in terms of UI design and stuff like that. That's not really going to be the focus though. So we'll explore some WPF, and really it's going to be about trying to do a bit of a plugin system with iService collection. So that's the goal. We'll see how it goes. As always, if you're new to my live streams, ask away in the chat. I'm happy to answer questions on anything you want to know about. If it's not related to the topic that I'm going through, that's totally cool too. So I will be watching chat. I have this going to 7 platforms right now. So one of the chats is joined, and I should be able to put that chat up on the screen. So I think the only chat that is not coming through on this is going to be TikTok, but I am watching TikTok chat separately. So again, if you have questions and stuff, please just ask. I'm happy to try and answer. So with that said, C# related questions, totally cool. If you want to ask anything about software engineering, if you're not familiar with who I am, I'm a principal software engineering manager at Microsoft, but I have been programming for 21 years and have worked at startups and done all sorts of cool stuff. So happy to try and offer any advice if that's helpful. Okay, let me get my screen switched over to Visual Studio. We will try to get our first little bit of a project set up, and we'll see how things go. So, screen. I got to bring my face back. There I am. Hopefully that's coming through clear for folks. If at any point you can't see clearly or audio sucks or whatever it happens to be, just let me know. Happy to try and adjust. So what I'm going to do is just start off with a new project. I have no idea what I want to name it or anything. I'm probably going to remake a lot of what I'm doing. Not a big deal for now. Like I said, it's just more to get familiar with things. So I do want to go make a WPF app. If you are wondering why I am not going with Maui or something like that, it's because for what I'm interested in building, I don't really need to go cross-platform or anything like that. So I'm not too concerned. So we're not going to do that. Go pick this. Yeah, I don't know what I want to call it. I'm just going to leave it as WPF App 1. Because, as I said, I will go remake this entire thing at some point. Okay. So, for context too, before Microsoft, I did a ton of desktop development. So, it used to be WinForms and then WPF. So, I would say, out of 21 years of programming, only the last 4 years or so have not been inside of like WinForms or WPF. So this used to be what I was really familiar with, but I have not had to program in WPF and make UIs and stuff. So it's been a little while. I can explain some things about what I like to do before, and we can check that out. Got our main window here, but this is the application. Oh, really? This looks like it's a lot more stripped down. So I have not seen WPF apps since, I don't know. Like I said, it's been a few years now. So I'm actually pretty surprised that there's not a whole lot in these now. So like there used to be like all the startup code and stuff. So that's just gone, which is really cool. I'm actually kind of shocked. So again, if we go run this as an example, right, we're just going to get a little window. It's not going to do literally anything, which is fine. Right, totally empty canvas for us to go work with and stuff. And if you haven't used WPF, like what you're able to do, maybe my toolbox is here. Oh, I probably haven't even set up my Visual Studio to develop well in here, but you can go add stuff into the grid, right? So if you wanted to go put a button, that kind of stuff. But I'm pretty sure my toolbox usually, oh, there we go. I don't know why that took a second to populate, but sorry, and the text might be a little small just because my resolution's high and I'm only showing a small portion of my desktop here. But, you know, you can drag and drop stuff, right? So if you want to go put a checkbox, there you go, I put a checkbox. It actually put it inside of the button, which is not what I would want. But anyway, you can go drag and drop, and it's kind of nice because you get a little designer here. Or you can go work right in the XAML, which is also pretty cool. But I am probably going to have to search because, like I said, this is completely different. I want to be able to work with some dependency injection, and there is no startup or entry point. That's probably the biggest thing that's missing here. So I need to go, I'll be talking as I'm kind of doing a search on the side. But that's, like I was saying, one of the biggest changes I'm noticing right now is that what you used to have is like a program.cs file. There would be a startup. Is there like a override? Like you'd have this kind of thing, like a startup method you can go configure. But it's just kind of odd. I'm not really sure where that's all moved to. So, oh, interesting. Okay. So someone else is suggesting, can I pull this up on my screen? Yeah, let's do that one sec. This kind of pattern here. Obviously I'm on Stack Overflow. I don't even know if ChatGPT or whatever would be in a good position to be able to do it. But here's what I want to do, right? I want to be able to go make a service collection so we can do some dependency injection. But what we used to have was this kind of thing. So again, this is it's not even overriding. They've hooked up an event handler in the XAML. So I'll walk through some of this if you're not familiar with what I'm saying in WPF. But in WPF itself, so let me go back to the code. If I go back into here, this window, if we're looking at the code here, we should be able to do something like add an event handler. So on, what is it? Just startup? It's on the window. Oh, it's on the application itself. My apologies. So I've done, let's see. Right, so you'd be able to do this, and then you should be able to say something like, right, you can add an event handler, which I wouldn't bother doing because we just have this here to go override. But that's the part that I'm kind of curious about. So again, if I pull this back up, you can see that this XAML, maybe I had to click over here. Ah, there we go. That's really odd. So you can't tell because you aren't looking at my mouse as I'm streaming, but I was clicking on the window and then onto the XAML file for the app, but I needed to double click. I thought it was just going to load as soon as I clicked, but it doesn't. So if you see that I'm clicking in the Solution Explorer, it's not toggling. But anyway, that's that. So if you wanted, you could do startup, new event handler. Then if we go into the code behind, you'll see that it added this event handler. So a comment about how I like to write code, or how I used to like to write code in WPF, is that I try to avoid as much XAML as possible. And this comes purely from a testability perspective. Things may have evolved greatly since I've last used WPF, but what I used to find is that the more stuff you put into XAML, the less you're able to test things. So for example, if we want to be able to go test any of the code that's inside of here, or even if you were to put it in the code behind here, it's any XAML dev tries to avoid XAML. Yeah, that's the reality. So the problem is that if you end up having your code that you want, like your business logic or anything that you're interested in testing, and you're coupling it to the UI components. So again, like on this window, for example, the more stuff that you put in directly to your UI controls, the harder of a time you have. And that's really unfortunate because a lot of the stuff that sort of Microsoft set up for WPF is like you can do binding right in the XAML, and it just makes it feel like it's really awesome to drop all this stuff right into XAML, and you don't have to go write code. But then the problem becomes testability of this stuff. So again, I'm talking about this as someone who hasn't worked extensively in WPF in years now, but this used to be something that I would try to avoid a tremendous amount. So anything that you're putting in here is purely visual, in my opinion. You want to strive for that as much as possible. Even then, we would build stuff and try to control visual aspects in code. And the reason that we would do a lot of that is that we could go write tests that would basically go exercise even things like collapsing elements and stuff, because we could trust that if our logic behind the scenes was doing what it needed to do, then the UI would take care of the rest. So a couple things in the chat here. So XAML is kind of like Java FX for the .NET UI. I'm actually not sure what Java FX is, so let me go have a quick peek. And actually one of the top searches was how they relate to each other, right? So let me pull it up here. So Stack Overflow. This is what we used to use before ChatGPT for folks that aren't familiar. Oh, so yeah, okay, cool. So some type of markup language, and they're saying which it's similar to XAML. Property binding. Yeah, it sounds like it's probably the equivalent type of thing. So the other thing, so Nick Hodge in the chat here on YouTube is saying, hello MVVM pattern. So that's the model view model. What is it? Model view model. So there's a couple of different things. You'll have MVC, model view controller, and MVVM. So I think it's model view model. Model view. Yeah, I just had to search it. So there we go. Right. And model view model is nice, but also I think there's some downfalls to it. And basically it all comes back to the more stuff that you jam into XAML, the worse time you're going to have. So you can, like one of the things with model view model that a lot of people will say is like, hey, like you're not putting code behind. So let me go back to the main window here. Like basically your code behind should most of the time just look like this, right? It's sort of an exaggerated pattern where it's like if you're putting any code behind that's not just like the initialized component call, like probably a code smell, you don't want to be doing that. Maybe for custom controls and stuff like that, that's where you're doing a little bit of this. But if you're putting logic behind here, people are like, that's a big no-no. So generally what you end up doing is using something like MVVM. And the goal when you're using MVVM is that you're able to move away from having you end up moving away from having the stuff directly on your control. So in this case, this is a window control, and you would do it in a view model that can do the binding. So you don't manipulate the control or the window in this case directly. You manipulate a view model, right? So you would have, I'm just going to do this quickly. You might have like a, no copilot. That's not what I want. You might have a class, might do a model, and you, okay, here, so there, Copilot, thank you very much. You could have like a title, and then you would go basically to your main window, and you could do something like, you would do a binding here. And you go bind to a property. Right, so, oops, let's close these ones off. Right, you'd have to go have a, what do they call it, context? Is that what, it's been so long, man. Anyway, you can go bind to stuff, and that way you can set the context of your, I think that's what you need to do, right? You set a context. Not context. Oh, maybe it's, maybe Windows don't have a context. Anyway, you bind stuff and that's done directly in the XAML. But now, if you want to go test out that stuff, if you want to do like integration testing across data context, is that what it's called? Let me double check. Thank you in the chat. I knew the stream was going to, there we go. Thank you. I knew the stream was going to be a little bit rough because it's been so long since I've had to do this, but this is all I used to do, which is kind of funny. So you could set a context. Here's another thing that I don't like. The data context is mutable from the outside. This is just a bunch of patterns about WPF that I don't like. It's mutable, right? We're able to get it and set it. I don't want that to be able to happen. I want to be able to do something like pass in a main window view model, right? This is what I want to have happen. But this is a pretty big no-no in traditional like WPF patterns, because when you go to do this kind of thing, I think it might break. Oh, it's not breaking here. Interesting. It probably breaks the preview. And I think there's ways you can kind of move around it. Let me explain why it will break the preview when we do more complex things, though. It's going to be instantiating the main window class with a parameterless constructor, right? If we go back here, it doesn't know that it needs to pass in, if I go back to the code, it doesn't know that it needs to pass this in when it wants to give you the preview. So a lot of the time what I found as I was fighting against how much quality of life do I want with a preview versus, again, I'm going to go back to the code, how much do I want to just be able to make stuff support dependency injection in a nice clean way? That was one of my biggest struggles. And I'm pretty sure, it's been a long time, but I'm pretty sure you can basically set like a default preview only mode kind of data context. I think you can do that, and that way when you want to go do previewing of things, you have something there as a placeholder. So that's one strategy you can leverage to kind of get some of that functionality back. But anyway, main point is MVVM is the proposed pattern for all of the WPF stuff, but I actually found that I moved towards a hybrid of MVVM and MVC. So I still had controllers, and I would make my code kind of work the opposite direction. So what I mean by that is a lot of the times in WPF, I feel like you are constructing things UI first. So all of your user interface elements you kind of make from the top down. That's generally how it felt to me. And instead of doing that, I like to kind of go from the back end first. So I would have a controller that was able to say, hey, I want to be able to go put a window on the screen. So there would be some type of pattern to allow me to go do that and control things from the code behind versus from the user interface. It sounds kind of weird, but it's basically what I'm saying is a lot of the stuff in WPF I liked, but a lot of the patterns felt backwards for how I like to code. Okay, so that's a lot of me blabbing, but let's go back to what I was trying to check out here, and that's going to be inside this. So what I want to be able to do is get this application going. I'm going to go back to good old Stack Overflow here. So they were suggesting doing this startup event handler. I don't want to do that, right? That's what they have here. I don't want to do that. What I want to do instead is just do this in the override. So to give you an example, we can probably copy all this stuff, right? We'll go put it here. So we'd go make our service collection. I need to, oh, sorry, my mouse is getting in the way. So we need the NuGet package. If you're familiar with ASP.NET Core, you kind of have all this stuff available to you right away. When you start going outside of ASP.NET Core, the service collection stuff still exists. It's in a NuGet package, but that's what you have to go do. So what they had done in the Stack Overflow examples, they have this configure services method. My goal as we go through this stream is that I want to go basically build an AutoFac equivalent to this. And it's worth explaining what I mean by that. So let me finish the rest of getting this service provider in place. And actually, I'm looking at this. This is in an on startup. Do we want to do this in the constructor of the application? Like maybe. I don't know yet. But we'll leave it here for now. So I service provider. Put that there. And then configure services. We will leave that empty for now. Oh, actually, sorry. They did do this in the constructor. My apologies. I have this kind of out of order here. So the constructor is going to be the first thing that runs in here. It needs to be because that's how C# works. When you go to construct an object, this is what's going to run the first time we make this. So there's going to be other logic that's running in between this constructor running and this on startup method happening. So what they're doing, and this is, I thought they were not doing this. I'll pull it back up. I thought that they had this stuff that I have highlighted in the app code, the constructor. I thought they had that in the on startup, but they do not, which is good because I don't want that. So you do this in the constructor. We can make this read only. This is going to be our dependency container that we can work with. Then what they do and what makes sense to me is that you ask the service provider, get required service, main window, show, which means we have to go register the main window. So well, how do we do that? There we go. Add a singleton, main window. This should technically work, but we had the application running without doing any of this, right? Which means we have some extra code somewhere. And that's going to be, first of all, I got to get rid of that event handler. We don't want it. But you can see that this startup URI says main window.xaml. I think we can get rid of that and basically keep our app XAML extremely lightweight. You can see that I'm, even with this brief example, I am moving away from XAML as much as possible and trying to go into code. The more that I put into code, the more I can start pulling out into smaller classes, have things that I can test just on the code itself, and completely avoid doing anything in XAML. I think this will work, but let's find out. And of course, it's going to take a moment. There we go. So look, it does the exact same thing. Not exciting at all. But maybe we can do something like this. Just to kind of show that it's working. Because I realized that that looked the exact same. We could do something like main window. I wanted to do like title. Right? Just so you know that it's actually running this code and not some leftover remnants of what we had before. But you can see the title says hello world now. Oh, wait. Oh, it's delayed. Okay. I checked the stream and it wasn't showing up. I was about to have a heart attack that I was I was sharing the window and not the portion of my monitor. That would have been awkward. Okay. So, cool. This stuff works. And in fact, what's really cool about this is that we can go do the data context with the binding now. And what I mean is if I go back into here, oh, it's not jumping because it's partial. If I wanted to do this, main window, yeah, view model, I guess is the, there we go. So if I wanted to do that, I could do this kind of thing. Again, I don't like the data context is mutable from the outside. It really bothers me. But we could go do this. I'm going to go move this into a new file. Apparently not. Visual Studio. Really? That's so weird. Oh, that's a bug for sure. Okay. That's really bizarre. You might not have observed what just happened, but I used a refactoring tool in Visual Studio, and when I bring this up, this menu, the menu item's gone now, but what you're able to do is basically move the class into a new file. You can see that that's not there now. But if you look in the left-hand side of my Solution Explorer, again, I know the text is very small, I apologize. You can see it made a new file. But what it did was it moved the main window with it, and that's not what we want. And that's because... oh, that's so disgusting. You can see how main windows CS and XAML are now separate, but app XAML and app XAML CS are together. So anyway, it's just annoying. There we go. It'll nest it now. That's what it was supposed to do. So the bug is that the code used to exist in here, right? I pulled it out, and then it decided it was going to move both both types into the file. That's really funny. Okay, we don't need all this stuff here. And now we have a view model. But if we were to go run this, I suspect that the application should crash. It might not. And the only reason it might not is because main window right now, the way that we have it defined, it has one constructor and it must take in a view model. I don't have a view model registered on the dependency container, right? It's only main window. There is no view model. So if I go press play, it should crash because it should say it can't find that view model. So that's good. The only reason I was thinking it might not is I can't recall if there was like some, I don't know, some other constructor that's by default on a window type, but there isn't, so that's good. Now we can go do this. And this works. But we're not doing anything with that view model, right? So I can't remember the syntax for binding stuff. Title. It's not just going to be title, though. Or maybe it is. I think you do this and it figures it out. No data context found. Let's go see. There, it does work. So the IntelliSense is kind of weird. Let me go back and explain what was just happening there. If we look at the XAML, I put binding and then title, but the IntelliSense wasn't showing anything coming up. And I think that's because the data context right now doesn't have a type assigned. That's going to bother me. I used to know how to do this. I think you can do, I might have to search it, but the idea is that it doesn't know the type of the data context, because if we go back to the code, not there, in here, data context itself, if you see I'm hovering over it, it's just an object, right? So when you're in the editor, it doesn't know the type of your view model. It can't know because it's just an object. But there is a setting that you can put on here somewhere to be able to say like data context type or something. Let me search it. XAML. IntelliSense for data binding not working. Let's see. Ah, thank you, Nick Hodge. Clearly you've been you've been doing this more recently than I have. This kind of thing. Let me do this. I hate how this stuff is all spaced. And then I should be able to do main window view model. There we go. So now title shows up. Yep. Thanks, Nick Hodge. So he says previous life up until October 23 was XAML. This, like I said, I used to do this stuff for years. It was all WinForms, and the forensics company I was at before Microsoft, we transitioned from WinForms over to WPF. I built tons of stuff in WPF. It's just been so long. So I actually don't think that we knew about this until very late in our building of things there, which is kind of funny because it's super helpful. It's super helpful to have all the IntelliSense come back up, especially when you're in the XAML and you're like, where the heck is all this stuff? Like a lot of things going on, but this really helps because, I mean, we only have the one thing title, but if we had other things that we wanted to work with, we'd be able to get them. And thank you for the comment on TikTok. I appreciate that. So yeah, if we go run this now, we should get the binding working. There we go. Right, it says hello world, so we have the title all set up. And just to kind of briefly explain where we've got to so far, we've basically gone ahead and done dependency injection on the main window to pass in the view model that we want to work with using a service collection here. And then basically it's all done with respect to binding behind the scenes. And that's because we set the data context in the constructor. And one last spot to check, we have the binding done in the UI. Now, I'm not going to go this far, but one of the last things I remember doing in terms of like software design, I guess, with WPF is that we were starting to move away from even having the bindings in the XAML. So we started doing that because, like I said, we just wanted to move everything away, because it was easy enough that you could have bugs like this. So you're refactoring stuff, you're moving things around, and you delete the binding, right? How are you going to test that that works in code? Right? Like it just isn't going to be there. So kind of crappy. I wonder though, I think to kind of prove a point, let's do this. Well, we'll go see what the title is. Right, the title's empty because the binding hasn't actually taken place. Sorry, I realize I just zoomed in on the code, but I can't zoom in on the tooltip. This is what I get for all my YouTube videos. I go 1080p, but this is 4K right now, and you have 1/4 of my screen. So the variable xxx is empty. So the data context doing the binding for us that we see done here, this has not yet occurred. And what ends up happening, if I'm not mistaken, is that we basically need to wait to go render the control to go allow WPF as a framework to go say, like, yes, we need to go do the binding. So we would have to do the show part. And if I do show, I think that's a blocking call. Show dialog is supposed to be blocking, but I think main window show is also going to block. So we oh no, we hit it. So, okay, we do get the binding taking place, so that's good. So I can't recall the exact problems we used to have with this kind of stuff, but maybe it is the fact that we'd have to show this first. Yeah, you have to hook into events on main window to see what happens after binding. And this is probably what I would want to do with my main window, is show it as a dialogue. But anyway, the point is that we had to actually show the window to be able to get the data context and the binding to happen. And if you're thinking about it from a testing perspective, as much as possible, this is my opinion for testing user interfaces, is that when I test user interfaces, I don't want to see the user interface. Sounds kind of funny, but my philosophy is that I want to be able to test as much as possible about a user interface without ever having to see it. And the reason why is that I want to be able to check as much as I can with code. And as soon as we have to start showing user interfaces, having any visualizations and stuff occur, that is not a good setup for automated coded tests. It's a great thing if you want to be able to go look at stuff, to walk through scenarios. I think there's tons of different situations where you may want to have you could do like recorded playbacks of clicking through an application or something like that. You may have situations like that that you want, but if I just wanted to prove, like, this is how simple it is. If I just want to prove that my main window is always going to have the title that I set inside of my data context, I don't want to have to show a window to do it. It's just too heavy-handed. So something, I know we're using WPF right now, but something that was really cool in Blazor, if you've used BUnit, what I thought was super awesome was that you don't have to work around things this way. You can basically just ask it to render the screen for you. And when I say render the screen, I mean render the HTML for it. So it is all done in code, and you don't have to go show a window and have a visual thing kind of happening. So definitely B unit for Blazor is super awesome in that regard. But just a sec. Cool. Okay. So not super exciting yet. Still trying to remember how WPF works. But what I want to do is focus on not that, probably not that, and probably not that. I want to focus on this stuff that we have here, and my zoom is broken. I can't zoom back out of the code. Come on. There we go. Oh man. It's the simple things, right? Okay. So my goal that I want to explore has very little to do with WPF, actually. It has everything to do with using service collection and doing assembly scanning. So there is a NuGet package that's called Screwtor, I believe is how you pronounce it. And I haven't really used it much. I've written a couple blogs about it just on the usability, but it's been a little while. And this should allow you to do assembly scanning. And if you're wondering why, if you're saying, Nick, why the heck do you want to do assembly scanning? You don't even need it here. It's just because in AutoFac, I like having modules. And I did say that I was going to show what I meant by that. So let me get AutoFac installed. We'll take it away later, but just so I have something to compare to. Okay, we'll get this installed. I want to show you the difference between what we have generally. Yeah, Nick, AutoFac, this feels funny. It sounds like I'm talking to myself. Nick Hodge, I need to be able to say your last name or else it just sounds very bizarre. I love using AutoFac, but I'm finding because service collection, iService collection, everything in ASP.NET Core, there's so much that's getting built around this now that I'm finding that because I love using AutoFac, it's almost making things more problematic. So my goal is to see if I can get more comfortable with using iService collection, because I feel like Microsoft has advanced iService collection so much since I started using AutoFac and dependency injection. Like AutoFac used to, and it still has more features than the built-in stuff, but it used to be like there was no comparison, right? There was just no comparison because AutoFac had so many features, but now iService collection is much better. Yeah. Nick Hodges, love AutoFac, but have to marry iService collection. That's exactly it. And you can hook up AutoFac to iService collection. You can use it as, or I guess the way it works in ASP.NET Core is like you use AutoFac as the service provider factory or something like that. So you can kind of marry them together. But it's still weird. And I keep running into problems where I'm like, man, that doesn't work exactly how I'd like. So the pattern that we generally get people using is extension methods. And I know a lot of people love extension methods, and I'm not going to say that I hate them, but I don't think that they're the tool that I want to use for this sort of thing. And I'll explain. So what we get with extension methods is that we can go basically pull this, and I'll just do this part quick. So I can extract method. I'm going to call it configure controls. And this is not an extension method yet. It's going to have the exact same functionality, but you see how it's calling configure controls on line 16, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this out. I'm going to go make a public static class. Sure. It knows. I want this code. Copilot guessed at what I wanted, but it wasn't quite right. So what we're able to do now is not a whole lot of difference, but it just makes it look nicer, I guess, for most people. Right? Yay. We just flip the words around. But I have a fundamental problem with this when it comes to plugins. And
again, if you're not familiar with a lot of my stuff and how I design software, I talk a lot about building with plugins because it is at least for me, it's a forcing function for modularity. And what I mean by that is I am forced to go write code inside of individual plugins, and it literally, like in code, physically forces separation of different things. And by putting those boundaries in place, yeah, you might go, it makes it harder to work with, but that's literally the point, is that I'm trying to create these boundaries that I have to play within because they enforce the design that I'm trying to have. Yes, it does add complexity. Yes, it's overkill for many things, but especially when I'm developing software on my own, like I said, it's a forcing function that lets me guide the code I'm writing into designs that I want to have. So the problem with this is that on line 16, I still have to call configure controls. I don't like it. I don't want to have to go add more code to go configure things. So if I were to go add a plugin to this, right, what I would love to be able to do, say I wanted to show, I'm going to go, if we run this just for a second, just so I have something to talk to. So we have this screen, says hello world in the title. Say that I wanted to have a plugin system that would allow me to dynamically drop controls into this window, right? So when I say dynamic, I mean I don't want to go rebuild the core application, and I would like to be able to drop a DLL into the bin directory, start the application up, and without having rebuilt the core application, we get a new control. That's what I want. The problem is that when we use service collection this way with extension methods, you would have to write a line of code inside of here that knows how to go configure that thing. And the solution is not in the end that we never have to go register the dependency. You still have to register the dependency, but I don't want to do it in my core application. I want my core application to be super dumb. The dumber my core application is, the more that I can move out logic into plugins, into different feature areas where I feel like it belongs. I don't feel like my core application should know about how to go register the different dependencies. To me, that just feels wrong. And obviously, right now, in this simple example with the main window, I don't have a good example to make a case here, but I'm just trying to articulate that's the challenge that I try to overcome with this stuff. So what I would like to have is that as I continue to add features and plugins, I don't want to have to keep adding more extension methods, right? Obviously, you wouldn't do it this way. You'd have better names for the things you were building. But I don't want to have where I just keep having to tack a line onto here. I don't want to do that. I don't want to touch my core application. Yes, I will still have to go do something like this to register the dependencies, but I want to do it in the feature area or the plugin area that I'm working with. So that's the point I'm trying to get across here. Now, how does that work with AutoFac? Right, so did I add AutoFac, or was I just blabbing too much and forgot to add it? Let me double check. I did add it, okay. Okay, so the way that this works in AutoFac is similar to what you see up here. So we would do a container builder. Oh my goodness, this autocomplete, it just... Let me add it up here. That was a nightmare. There we go. Okay, so we go make a new container builder. There's no way that's a thing. Okay, good. What we would do is, generally, I like to make a module, so I'm going to show you the comparison. It's going to look very similar to what we have here. Public sealed class. So we do a load. So as you'll see, it's going to look very, very similar, right? You don't need the base load for AutoFac, but you would do something like builder, register type. You don't even need as self, but I would like to do single instance. Okay, so almost like the exact same idea, right? almost the exact same idea. But I'm going to show you the difference. And what you could do is this register module. That's what I want. Thanks, Copilot. So you could do this, and you have the exact same problem. And in fact, let me go one step further, because we would end up doing a container, right? So these 3 lines are functionally equivalent to these 3. The service provider that we get from the service collection is basically like the container, iContainer from AutoFac. So same idea. You can see that this code looks almost the same, but here's the big game changer. That instead of doing register module, you would do something called assembly scanning. And we're going to see that with Scrutor. I hate that name. It sounds so bizarre to say. Scrutor, it's just unnatural. It doesn't feel like it flows. We can change, instead of doing register module this way, we can go do assembly scanning with AutoFac. See how it says register assembly modules? We could do literally, one sec. How am I going to do this? Directory. I don't know if you can tell. Seems like I'm struggling to type. What's happening is that Visual Studio is having such a low latency for putting the, whether it's Copilot or just the normal IntelliSense suggestions, there's such a small delay that as I'm typing individual characters, it's trying to complete too fast. And what ends up happening is that it's matching on stuff where the letters aren't contiguous. And as a result, I have no idea what it's matching on, and I can't see what I'm typing. So that's why I'm struggling a lot right here. So I want to type directory, but see, like flow direction left to right, I just want to type directory, man. I'm programming on my gaming machine, which is where I stream from and do my YouTube videos. I don't have this problem on my main machine. That's annoying. Oh my goodness. Okay. So what we can do, and this is going to be a pretty naive implementation of assembly scanning, so I don't recommend you do it exactly this way, but it looks something like this. We'll do directory get all files. I'm going to pull this up here. We're going to ask for all the DLLs. Then we're going to use some link here, and we will do we'll do file assembly. I never know. Assembly string. No, we want load file or load from. There's one of these is going to break. I'm going to take a guess. I never remember. Actually, we can just do this, I think. And is that it? Is it taking an enumerable? No, it needs an array. Actually, it's worth commenting because folks, if you're watching my stuff, I almost guarantee you're watching Nick Chapsis on YouTube, of course, unless you're just someone else who's not even into C# and you're just here to support. But I think Nick Chapsis just put a video out on this not too long ago, or he's covering some of the new features coming out. But the idea with params, so if you're looking at the tooltip, params, assembly, and it's an array, this is changing in some of the upcoming C# features that we have. You will be able to use params with other collection types, and I think even with IEnumerable. So we wouldn't have to do this. So in case you hear about that feature and you're like, who cares? Literally for a situation like this, it's forcing me to make it go to an array, whereas going forward, you'll be able to declare params with not arrays, and that way you don't force someone to use an array type. It could be a list, it could be enumerable, whatever you want. Okay, so this is naive assembly scanning and modules. Reflection namespace and AutoFac namespace collide with each other, which is annoying. Pardon me. What's wrong with that? Oh, pardon me, Visual Studio. Yeah, so Steve says, I would not recommend to do this with link. Do multiple steps, get file, try, load, get types. Exactly. And in fact, you don't need to do the get types because that's what assembly modules does. It will get the modules for you. But you do want to have some, first of all, this, not so great. If you have unmanaged DLLs, you're in for a wild ride because when you go to do this part, it's going to throw exceptions. So you definitely don't want to do this in Link. This is a live stream, so I'm trying to move through stuff, but that's exactly right, Steve. So thanks for calling that out. Oops, not what I wanted to click. Leave a little comment there. Okay, so if we go run this, what should happen is that this just works, unless I pick the wrong thing. What? Why did that not work? The file name? What am I missing here? That's the pattern, right? Oh, you know what? I am being silly. It's not the pattern. That's because we need to tell it the directory. There you go. I thought this part was the filter. It's the filter now. It wasn't before. Yeah, thanks, Steve. There's a delay between my stream and the chat and stuff too, so... Oh, wow. This is great. So did it find it, though? It must have, right? Interesting. Interesting. Why doesn't that work? We can see that we have the sorry, you might not be able to see because the text is microscopic, but we do get the main window view model, the main window are on the container, but it's complaining because it's not able to map the resources for them now, which is strange. I don't know why that's the case. Anyway, point is that if I go back, we're not going to be using AutoFac anyway, just for the record. That's why I don't really care. The point that I was trying to make is that you could go now, let's assume, just to make a point here, if you had different plugins, this is a terrible example, by the way. I just split these up into 2 modules now. Notice how I didn't go change this code. I just left it the same way. But if you were making more plugins, you'd be able to essentially just go dynamically load them. You never have to come back into the core application to change it. Whereas if you wanted to do this with the extension methods, you would need to go add more extension methods into the core application every single time, or calls to the extension methods every single time. That's a thing that I just don't like doing. It kind of breaks the design that I like to use. So if we double check here, just again, you might not be able to see it because it's tiny, but we do have both loaded, the main window view model and main window on the container. So again, don't know why it's not loading through AutoFac, but we're not using AutoFac anyway. What I want to do is try to rebuild that assembly scanning functionality without having AutoFac. So let me go into the project file. We'll get rid of AutoFac because we're not going to be using it. And I think we should be able to try and use Screwtor for that. But I can't remember how Screwtor works. So, one sec. Andrew Locke is amazing. If you guys don't know who Andrew Locke is, he's like one of the best C#.net bloggers ever, which is cool. But you can see this is basically, I'll zoom in a little bit, a lot of bit. we get a scan like extension method right on the service collection, which is nuts. Super awesome. Yeah, live coding is really hard. Yes, it is, Steve. So thank you for acknowledging that. It's funny. I've mentioned this before, like on live streams. The By the way, I do live streams on Monday nights, 9:30 p.m. PST, and these ones are just general software engineering, like career advice and things like that. And then I try to sprinkle in these coding ones, but man, coding live is a pain in the butt for sure. And I think it's important to show it because when people watch the YouTube videos, everything's hopefully mostly pretty polished, right? The reality is, like, that's not what software development looks like. It just isn't, right? I tried to make it very clear, unless you just joined the stream recently. WPF stuff, AutoFac, like I've been using those things for years, right? I haven't used WPF in ages, but you could see that even when I started this up, I was like, man, I can't remember anything in WPF. And it's changed a little bit since I last used it too. So it's just more real when you see it happening live. And then plus I can't edit it. So you can see exactly what's going on. Okay, with Screwtor though, again, I hate saying this name, so I apologize if it's hurting your ears like it's hurting mine. We do get some scanning functionality, so I think we can try something out. Scan from calling assembly, add classes as matching interface. So what's cool about that, let me go back to the code here. So what I had to do, maybe it's not obvious because I got rid of the AutoFac stuff. What I had to do in this code and AutoFac was I got to, in AutoFac you can say how you want to go register the thing, like as an interface. And I think you can on here too. I can do like, oh, if we had an iWindow, I think you can do this kind of thing where you say, when someone asks for the interface, give it this implementation. Add singleton is kind of like an AutoFac. You had to do like dot, was it as singleton? Or no, it was single instance. Right, you would do this kind of thing in AutoFac after your registration. But with Screwtor, let's see what we have. So I'm going to get rid of that. Scan. So this scan method is not part of iService collection. It is, you can see using Screwtor at the top. Screwtor? Do people like Screwtor better than Screwtor? Let me know in the chat, because both hurt my ears and make me wildly uncomfortable to say. But anyway, it's an extension method that we get added onto service collection, so that's really cool. So just wanted to show you that that is the new thing. And then we get a type source selector. And if we look back at Andrew Locke's blog, he had it like very elegant, right? From calling assembly. So the difference with his, at least in this example here, is I was trying to scan for multiple assemblies. And this one is just doing from calling assembly, but I'm pretty sure we'll be able to do more. Give me one sec here, just checking something on the stream. Cool. Okay. So from assemblies, there we go, right? So that's cool. I deleted my other crappy code, but let's go ahead and, oops. I'm going to try to make this look as clean as Andrew Locke's stuff that he had. So we could do this, and then we can say selector dot, it was from assemblies. That's right. And we had to give it the assemblies. Okay, I'll take Steve's advice. I will do this on separate lines of code. I'm not going to do the try catches and stuff around it. So Steve's saying in the chat, in case no one's reading it or you're on a different platform, if you work with DLLs, load them as byte stream and check the magic bytes so you know it's native or managed DLL. If it's managed DLL, you can load them from the existing byte array. Yeah, that's great. It's a good call. And then that overload is here. So you can see this here. Oops, sorry. This one, this overload says raw assembly. So as Steve is saying, what you could do is when you're going through those files, so you do directory, get files. Come on, Copilot. Remember what I put before? No? Okay. There it is. So we're getting all the files now. What Steve is saying is that you could instead, and you maybe want to do this in a for loop and stuff instead of link, but you could go get the stream to each file and you could go check the first couple bytes. I don't know what is the magic bytes. It's funny. I worked in digital forensics for 8 years and I can't remember. So this is kind of interesting for folks that are curious. And this is maybe a fun little note about digital forensics. So in digital forensics, a lot of the time, what we need to be able to do is not just trust things. Like you don't have the luxury a lot of the time to go through a file system and say, hey, like I'm just going to open up all these files and find what I want. You can and should do that, but when you're building digital forensics tools, you need to be able to scan through binary data a lot of the time. So you get very familiar with different, they call them like magic headers or magic bytes, depending on what you're dealing with. But if you scroll through this, right, there's a bunch of different extensions. I saw something that was interesting. So there's like GIFs, right? So you have a handful of bytes that are for different image formats, JPEGs, right? Bunch of different ones. So anyway, you could go do the same thing and go check binary files. So you could check your DLLs to make sure that they are things that you can go look up. Thank you, Nick Hodge. This is awesome. They said that's Java. Oh, for Java files? Oh, Java class file. Yeah, yeah. Cool. Sorry, I didn't have that on the screen. I was like, what about Java is that? Do you think that's coincidence? That it's a cafe babe and it's Java? Maybe? Coincidence? What's the other one? It's oh man, there's a Windows thing. I'm pretty sure it's Windows, and it's raw beef is the magic header. It can't be raw. What is it? Something beef. Anyway, it's funny. But I can't remember what it's for. And I was just trying to look for beef in here, and it's not here. So maybe it's. Let me search at another tab. I'm not making this up. I can't remember what it. Oh, dead beef. What does the word dead beef mean? Right. Anyway, kind of fun stuff when you're dealing with hex, but so you could go do that, and that would be a nice optimization here. We're just going to take a shortcut because I don't have to worry about that right now. Yes, my C library is from 92 to get the file type. That is absolutely awesome. So should have that. What was I doing here? Oh, we're getting assemblies. That's right. What's that one? The beef CACE? Beefcake. No. I'm searching it in another tab as I go through this. Google's not picking up anything, so feel free to elaborate in the chat. But magic headers are a lot of fun. Okay, so we have all the assemblies. We can give that into Scrooter here. We can then add classes. And I think it had as implemented interfaces, as self with interfaces. Generally, so I should comment on this. Most of the things when I'm coding my own stuff, I slap interfaces onto a lot of stuff. And that's if I'm heavily unit testing things, I use interfaces for a lot because I mock a lot of things. Some people watching are going, why the heck would you do that? You can't just mock everything. Like, yeah, it's... I like writing code that way in case I want to write unit tests. And I basically think about that as I write code. More recently, especially when we have things like test containers and being able to set up functional test. Oh, I just realized my TikTok live was discontinued due to inactivity, which is very bizarre because I feel like we've been active the whole time. Let me go restart that. That's so bizarre. Come on, man. Cool. We'll just kick that back off. Maybe it's because not enough people on TikTok were watching. That's hurtful. Okay. So when I am programming, I generally like to slap interfaces onto things, except I found more recently, especially with things like test containers, I just don't have to write as many mocked unit tests as I want. PE, open a managed deal on a hex editor. I don't have a hex editor on this computer. I do on my other one, but this one is for gaming, and I've only recently switched over for streaming and video, so... Okay, we got the assemblies. I was commenting on this. I generally would do has implemented interfaces. So if you were to go look through a lot of the code that I've written for my own projects using AutoFac, you would see as implemented interface on basically everything. But what's nice about, oops, where did it go? Oh, as self with interfaces. What's nice about this is that if you start off and you don't have interfaces on your classes because you're like, I just don't need them yet. I don't want to maintain an interface in a class. I'm not writing unit tests on this stuff yet. I just don't care. Then at least if you switch over to that at some point, then you have the opportunity where this stuff is all just working out of the box. So I would probably roll with this for now. If you have strong opinions about doing this otherwise in the chat, would be very curious to hear. But this for me would work. We don't have interfaces on these things right now, so it's not going to matter. But if we read what this is doing, it should be pretty cool, right? We're going to get the assemblies out of the running directory. Should put the comment back in here that we don't want to just do this. This is a very naive way to do it. But we will use scan coming from Scrootor as an extension method. We will go load those types, so I guess add classes from these assemblies, and we will register them as their type plus the interfaces. And the things that we should be adding are just these. Now, this means that we don't need this anymore. We don't need it because we should be going to get the types. So let's go see if this works. Oh, yeah. And it worked better than AutoFac, right? It's the same thing, except it didn't work with AutoFac, which I'm really curious about. I don't know why it wouldn't find the resources properly, but it works, right? I don't have those types manually registered. That's the thing that I wanted to show you that I wanted to move away from. And in fact, this stream might be a little bit different than I thought. I thought we were going to have to go build this. I was expecting that Scrooter was not going to do exactly what I wanted here, but it does. It does do that. So that's really cool, actually. And one of the other things that's very nice about this, or I should talk about some pros and cons that I can see happening with this. So if you recall, and I got rid of all, can I control Z this? Control Z for I live in the United States now. I should use my Z's. Okay. I'm not going to get this code to compile because I'm going to get rid of it again. One of the things that's nice about AutoFac is that you can control the registrations very granularly. So when you create one of these modules, which is what I have on the screen right here, when you create one of these modules, the nice thing is that you have full control over how you want to register things individually, right? That's a pretty powerful thing that you can leverage. With Screwtor, and maybe there's more things that we have control. Oh, I got rid of all of it. But with Screwtor, we basically just said, we're going to load everything this way. And for me, that's probably okay. And I'm assuming maybe there's separate things we can do in Screwtor to have a little bit more control. So maybe. But you're kind of flipping things around. So I'm going to go get rid of all this again. Looks like I'm typing super fast. But right, this is like we're saying, hey, everything is going to look this way. Now, one of the drawbacks of AutoFac that I don't really like, and one of the really cool things about Screwtor is that in AutoFac, you have to go make a module. I guess you don't have to, but that's the that's the unit of organization is the modules inside of AutoFac, right? So it means that wherever you're creating code that you want to have get pulled in, say as a plugin, right? You're scanning a folder for DLLs, any code that you want to have incorporated as a plugin, you need to have a reference to AutoFac, which seems kind of weird, but how else would you do it? It needs to come from a module. So your plugin would need to depend on AutoFac, would need to go create its own modules, and then you could go say, oh, like my scanning code will go look for those modules. But the point that I'm getting at here is one of the drawbacks of AutoFac is that your plugins need to depend on AutoFac. What I was thinking we were going to walk through today was going to write some code that's kind of like Screwtor here, and basically trying to see if we could do away with having a hard dependency on AutoFac. Could we load things a different way if we were just going to use the iService collection? So that goes to show right here that this code using Screwtor is actually very helpful in that we don't have to have plugin projects go and have dedicated modules, right? I actually deleted the extension method, which is equivalent in the iService collection world to having a module, very similar, organizational grouping. I even deleted that. We're just going and asking for the classes and we don't have to have something to go have a dedicated setup. So that's even nicer in my opinion. So maybe I am going to convert. It's hard to say that out loud, but it's really difficult when you've been using stuff for years. Like I've probably been using AutoFac for 10 or more years, and it's almost like muscle memory. Like I will literally go make a new project, add AutoFac, add a couple of things by default. I'm going to switch to my full face so I can talk with my hands for a little bit. I disappeared. Coming back. There I am. So like add a muscle memory, right? Go create a new project, go add AutoFac, go add whatever else I need, depending on what I'm building. But AutoFac is one of the first things. I get rid of most of whatever's there in the template. I go make a container builder. I go register modules from assemblies. And then I just start by adding new projects. Like right away, out of muscle memory. I basically go build everything as plugins. And my core application is just a very lightweight AutoFac container builder, sometimes some logging and stuff wrapped around that. But this is it's interesting. I feel like the how far iService collections come and leveraging something like Screwdoor might be a big help. So um, like I said, I don't know how I'm gonna convince myself to switch over. Even one of the things that I'm working on right now. So I announced this. I guess today's only Saturday, so I put out a newsletter today and announced this. But I have a like basically a SaaS that I'm building on the side. It's called Brand Ghost, and for folks that are watching this and see the content that I put out, um, my content is put out online. I almost if I'm commenting on stuff or replying, that's all done by me. But I almost don't post anything directly to social media platforms. Everything that I've done is built through a system, and it's scheduled, all of it. So I wanted to codify this, and Brand Ghost is the tool that I'm building to basically codify this. And where I'm going with this is I have this thing that I'm building, and I'm like heavily entrenched in AutoFac, and now I'm like, oh man, this is a typical software engineering thing where I'm like, I should go replace all of it with iService collection and Screwder, right? Like I should go do that. But like the reality is, no, Nick, you shouldn't. Like maybe you want to think about moving in that direction. It's still relatively early, but if you keep looking at shiny things and going, oh, like I better go rewrite this, you'll never do anything. It's fine when it's your own personal projects, and I actually do recommend doing that when you're learning. So if you just have little hobby projects that you're doing for fun to build stuff, I do recommend it. Try new things out, try these different patterns. So like we were doing going between AutoFac and Screwdoor, if you're used to one, try the other, go convert stuff. It doesn't matter, it's a playground. You use it for learning. In this particular case, for me, if I'm trying to have a SaaS and I want to have customers at some point that will be paying for the service, you don't want to do that. So don't. But if architecturally you get to a point where you're like, it's just not working, you will want to think about pivoting, but I'm not there yet. I wanted to see if there's anything else from Screwdoor that I want to play around with. And I'm looking at the code. I'm not sharing it right now, but honestly, I'm pretty shocked that it did the things I wanted. I just thought we were gonna have to go build more things. So maybe what we can do before I wrap up or kind of move over to just totally open-ended questions is let's go back to the code. Let's see if we can go make a plugin to kind of prove what's happening here. So let me get I'm gonna disappear again. Every time I stream, I say, hey, I should figure this out so that I don't disappear. But I haven't. I want to go basically make a new project where we're going to load the main window from it. If that sounds okay. And this is going to be tricky. I'm trying to think about a good way to do this that demonstrates the capabilities here. We need a common type. So it's a bit of a pain in the butt. What else do we have on here? One sec. So I'll try to explain this a little bit more clearly. What I want to do is the main window that we have, just to demonstrate plugin loading. I want to go pull the main window code, including the view model. I want to go pull that into a new project. So let me go literally add that. So plugin one. Oh, I just realized that the TikTok stream thinks that I don't have audio, which is funny. So hopefully that's better for anyone that's been watching on TikTok has been like joining and being like, what the heck is this? And leaving, I'm sure, because there's been no audio. Amazing. Okay. And then Steve says, fun. I only have fun on my motorcycle. Coding is only a job. Well, I mean, to each their own. I'm allowed to have fun coding. right? Right. Let me go move this stuff out here. So I've just moved it over and double checking some stuff. It's not happy. Oh man. I didn't think about this. I don't know what things it's going to need here. Shouldn't have done that, I guess. I should have made a new project that's not just a class library. It probably needs to be like a control library. There we go. Sure, I'll call it that. Names don't really matter here. That is a whole lot going on. So that's a lot of stuff. Oh, I think they're just telling you how to go use it, which I don't care about. We're gonna get rid of it. Let me go delete this project too. So hopefully, obviously that file's gonna work. It's just a DTO. There we go. Excellent. Whew. Okay, I was getting nervous there. But well, this is the problem now. This is what I wanted to get to. Like, I don't have a reference to main window because it's in the the control library is going to be our plugin. So we can't ask to go resolve this directly. So what we could do, and I'm going to probably take a shortcut here because it's just a waste of time right now. What you could do is have another project that kind of defines the APIs that you want to have for your plugins. And that way you would know which thing to go resolve. Like your plugin could implement it and your core app would know. It needs to be like a common thing that you can refer to. But instead, what I'm going to do is see if service provider can get a type of window. I'm curious if this will work. Because there should only be... Oh, weird. No? There we go. There should only be one window registered. Should be. But I don't know. And the other thing is with Screwdoor, we did as self with interfaces, but I don't know if it's going to do the like the base class, which is interesting. We'll find out. Whatever. Oh, I forgot. Not this. I don't know what that's about. I should have known this is going to be a nightmare with WPF. Next time, Nick, don't do that. Let me do a little shortcut here. Okay, I'm going to go remake this main window. So dumb. That's okay. Okay, main window. I gotta scroll back up in the chat to get the little data context. Really? Why doesn't that work now? Nick Hodge, if you're still on, you gotta save us here. Unless it's just complaining about this. Maybe it is. That's okay. Anyway, this part's not working, but that's okay. We really don't need that. We just need to put the binding back on. Which was that? Oh, it did work. What the heck? It's complaining that it doesn't work, but it definitely does work. So that's cool. And then we have to go pass that in here. No, that's what we want. Okay, so this is basically the same that we had. Please let that build. Yeah, you're right, Nick. It probably just does need a Nick Hodge. I'm not talking to myself. I promise. Okay, so that built. The other thing that I forgot though is that we have to move the DLLs into the bin directory. So if we go run this, it should not work. It should throw an exception, but it didn't. Oh, get required service. Oh, Nick, come on. Okay, so it throws an exception. I do expect that to happen because there is no window registered. Now, I'm going to go open this and go move the DLLs over. You don't need to watch me do it. I'm in the bin folder. So what I'm doing is I'm copying the output of one and I'm going to go put it in the bin directory of the other. Now, I still don't know if it's going to, if this registration up here is going to allow it to register the main window as the base class of just window. So we'll find out. It does not work. That's a pain. What do we want to do about that? Is there a good way to do that? Trying to see if there's another way to register. My biggest projects in production are in WinForms. I've tried out WPF, but it does not work out for me. Yeah, I like even now, like I probably in my entire programming career of 21 years, I probably have over half of that still in WinForms. I don't like saying that out loud, but I think that's the reality. Okay, so I think I might need a marker, which sucks. I don't like doing that. Ugh. How do I want to do this? Can we get a service? I don't think that's going to work. So if folks are getting kind of lost about why I'm getting stuck here, when we do add classes as self with interfaces, main window, if we go look at main window in the code here, main window itself, so when we say as self, it will register as main window. And then it says with interfaces, and there are no interfaces that you can see here, which is why I went into window itself to see if there were any interfaces we could go ask for. A cheater move is I might be able to go check for this because I think it will be the only thing on the dependency container that has that interface. But we can't do this. And then we can get super nasty here. By the way, everything I'm doing here, don't do this ever because it's terrible. I said that we would probably want to have an interface that our plugin could refer to, and I mean it. So don't do that. I'm just trying to see if we can go find the type magically. And we did. Excellent. And there we go. Hello world. So there you go. We cheated. It works. The point that I'm trying to get across here is that we are able to show this form, right? And yes, I had to go change this part up because, like I said, I needed to have something common. I needed something common between the plugin and the core application, and I rushed to extract it, and we didn't have a common thing. Technically, window itself is common, right? It's a common type, but if we're using Screwdoor in this way, unless I were to go dig deeper and see if we could do a more granular registration, using Screwdoor in this way, we don't have the luxury of having a very specific registration. So the problem was, again, using as self, main window will be literally as main window. We can't see that. We can't refer to that type at compile time in the core application because we've pulled that out. And if we could use window, because that is common between the plugin and the core application, that would have been nice, except we can't because of this up here, right? Main window is not the same as window, unfortunately. So I was just trying to look for a common interface that we could see. iAddChild is one of those interfaces, so that's great. But the point that I'm trying to get across is once you have the assembly scanning in place, you can continue to go add things. You can continue to go extend your application and you never have to come back into your app to go change it. And once your entry point is set up to work and run, you never have to come back here to go do that either. So that's one of the things that I really like doing when I'm setting up my code is trying to, and again, if you've seen my other stuff, you probably know this about me already. So it might be a broken record, but for people that haven't seen my stuff before, I do like making my entry points to my programs being extremely lightweight, doing assembly scanning, getting my dependency container set up, and ideally I have one spot that starts the code off. So that's the ultimate goal. I'm probably going to wrap up the stream in just a sec here. So I wanted to kind of make sure that if folks are still on the stream, if you've been waiting to ask questions about whether it's C#, I'm showing WPF stuff right now, ASP.NET Core. If you're like, I don't even know about C#, I want to ask about other programming or software engineering things, I'm happy to take questions now. I mean, I do these streams to try and help other people, so I'd be more than happy to answer questions if you got them. That would make me feel good if I can help you, so please don't hold back. And I will probably take a moment while I'm waiting for any questions to talk about courses, because I also have those. So I have a bunch of courses on Dome Train, and I should probably start, but I have 2 more that I'm going to be putting together. And let's go back to courses by me. So these are 3 courses I have. So if you've never programmed ever before, you can use the Getting Started C# one. That one literally starts you off from never having written code in your life, and you're just curious and you're happy to get started in C#. The Deep Dive C# just extends on that. It's the first one is 5 hours. This one's about 6.5 hours, the Deep Dive one. Between the 2 of them, so about 11.5 hours of educational content, but I never promised this. You're not going to take these 2 courses and be able to program like everything possible in the world. It's just a starting point, right? By the end of them, you should be able to program in C# with some amount of confidence, but I don't like promising people expertise because I think that that's misleading. It will take you much longer than 11.5 hours to be able to master something, so I don't want to mislead you. The refactoring one is, I am really big on refactoring, so I was happy to do this course for Nick Chapsis. Walks through a bunch of different refactoring techniques. There's a big exercise kind of at the end here. And in my opinion, refactoring is one of the most important skills you can have as a software engineer. So that's another course I have. I don't think I'm allowed to publicly say what the other 2 that I will be releasing are. But I should start on the first one, and the second one will come probably a little later in the year, maybe towards the end of the year. But I'm excited to do both of those because I am a big fan of both of those. So if that doesn't help you figure out what I'm going to be doing, then I have no other hints, but those courses will be coming. So let me switch back to my full camera. I don't see any questions in the chat, so I may sign off here, but I'm gone. Come on. It's funny, I have this, where is it? I bought one of these one of these stream decks. And at the time when I got it, I was only making YouTube videos. I wasn't streaming. And I said, hey, like, even for your YouTube videos, this might be handy. It's literally unplugged in my hand. And I'm streaming now, and it's still unplugged in my hand. So I probably need to set this thing up and then configure it with OBS so I can press a button and smoothly transition between my scenes, but I don't have that done yet. So, I just wanted to say thanks everyone for watching. If you are watching the recorded version of this, thanks for checking it out. I do try to stream aside from my live stream on Monday. I try to make sure I can get a little bit of coding in on a stream during the week. So, hopefully this was helpful. You get to see some real live coding, seeing me stumble through stuff, and hopefully that's helpful for you to see that even after programming for 21 years, I have to use Stack Overflow for really basic stuff that I should know. So, all right, folks, thanks again. If you're interested in my next planned stream, it will be at the, well, I guess at the end of this week. It's a Monday. What's the date? The 17th, 9:30 p.m. PST. It will be about using AI in software engineering and what you can do and what you absolutely should not be doing with AI in software engineering. So do check that out. It will be, if you're watching this right now, it'll be on the same platform that you're watching it on. So if you're happy to watch it there, that's good. YouTube is my primary platform, so you can go ahead and check it out there as well. And thanks again. I do appreciate the time. We'll see you next time. Take care.